How's it going out there tonight?
Well, you stumped me now.
Check out our website, mannimaleresearch.com. Thanks to everybody. Hello. How's it going out there, everyone? Wayne here from Mannimal Research. I want to welcome everyone to another installment of Mannimal Encounters. Guys, the encounters have been coming in fairly steady, and I want to say thank you for that. But we do need to keep them coming, guys. So if you look at the ticker tape down there at the bottom, Mannimal Encounters at yahoo.com. Please send those over to us, guys. Again, doesn't just have to be Bigfoot related. It could be Dogman, paranormal, even UFO related. If it's weird, send it over, and we'll share it with the people. Got a couple of really good encounters that I want to share with you guys tonight. The first one, and I'm just going to get right into it, guys. The first one is coming to us from Jason from Exploring Intuition. He gave me permission to share this encounter, something that he experienced. So I told him I would drop him a line and give him a shout out. Guys, check out Exploring Intuition on YouTube. He's got a channel over there, and he okayed it for us to for me to share this encounter. It's a fairly short one, but it's pretty good. Around 10 years ago, myself and two others were investigating a well-known paranormal location in Ohio, Moonville Tunnel. At that time, the only way to get to the tunnel was a path which led alongside a creek, Raccoon Creek. It was around 3 a.m., and as we got out of the car, we immediately had a sense of dread. I had been there many times before. Sometimes that feeling is there, and sometimes it isn't. That particular night, it was very heavy. We had just started walking down the path towards the tunnel, and as we made our way in around 50 yards or so, a very distinct sound of a baby crying in the woods startled us. It was probably less than a couple 100 feet away from us. The two people I was with really wanted to turn around and leave, but I assured them it was just an animal and that sometimes beavers make those noises. I had no idea what I was talking about, but it sounded good at the time. In hindsight, I don't think beavers make those noises, but I think there were some in the area. But I knew there were some in the area, and I wanted to reassure them and myself. As we continued, it wasn't long before rocks began whizzing past our heads. And as we reached the tunnel, while we were inside the tunnel, rocks continued to be thrown at us. I don't see how that could happen without us seeing who was throwing them, as there were only two ends of the tunnel, and we could see both. Through the years, my mind has tried to process this, and I have scoured the web searching for animals who make sounds like crying infants, and I have yet to find any that even come close to what we heard. The only options that I can think of are it was some kind of animal, which doesn't explain the rocks being thrown. There was someone hiding in the woods at 3 a.m. on a random night waiting for someone to visit and scare them with a baby recording and throwing rocks at them. The abandoned tracks and tunnel are a highway for Sasquatch to travel through the densely wooded area, and there was a mother Sasquatch with a baby Sasquatch trying to frighten us away. The entire incident was paranormal in nature. Has anyone else experienced this? What are your theories on the phenomenon? That's a really good question, and we have some awesome listeners, some loyal listeners out there that I'm sure will comment and let us know if you guys are familiar with anything like that happening. I've heard occasions of people playing recordings of babies crying in the woods, and us at Manimal, our research group, we have considered doing it as well, doing some call blasting of a baby crying just to see if we could get a reaction from, because I've heard before that I think a lot of us have heard before that that type of recording will get a reaction from them. What kind of reaction, whether it be a motherly instinct or something more sinister nature, I don't know. But to hear a baby crying in the woods, that's fairly new to me. If any of our listeners out there have heard of this, let us know. Let us know, guys. I sure would appreciate it. And again, Jason over at Exploring Intuition, I appreciate you letting us use that one, buddy. I really do. This next one that we are going to get into is fairly long. So, guys, bear with me. I'll be reading it off of the my email here. So, just bear with me. Like I said, it took me a couple minutes to get through it, but it's really intense. It's a really, really good one. And the gentleman that sent this one in asked that I do not use his name. So, out of the respect for his wishes, I will not be doing so. We'll get right into it. This happened to my buddy and me when I was at college during the winter of 2010. I was and still am an outdoorsy guy who has been at home in the woods for a very long time. I've seen and heard a lot, but never had an experience like this. I met my buddy at college that first semester, and we became fast friends. Before I knew it, he was inviting me back to his family's place that winter to stay there and do a bit of hog hunting. I have hunted hogs since I was old enough to hunt, so I jumped at the chance. We got to his parents' place, and holy hell, it was beautiful. They own about 1,500 acres out in rural West Texas. His family raise, show, and sell cattle and are loaded. They are amazing people, and they kind of took to me like a second son. Over my time, took to me as a second son. Over my time at college, I was visiting them a lot. But since his family is avid hunters and the land they live on is mainly for cattle, they own another 1,000 acres they lease to hunters and also use themselves to hunt on. So after a day or two at their primary ranch, we set out to the hunting lease. It was just my buddy and myself. No hunters had leased it that winter yet. We set up our stuff at the little hunting cabin they had and set our alarm to wake up at 6 a.m. We got some rest and woke up ready to get out to the stand. Us being wild college kids, we brought the whiskey and Coke and our rifles. Spare me the lectures. We were stupid college kids. We got to the stand after a short hike through the cold and hopped on up into the stand. It was one of those big green metal stands that's elevated about 15 to 20 feet in the air. The area it was set up facing was perfect. To the left, about 100 yards, was a mostly caliche. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Caliche rock clearing with trees lining it and dead cactus. In front of us was a wider clearing with sparse trees and various weeds and grass. To the right was a decently dense patch of trees, and behind us was a dense patch of trees and a high fence about 30 yards back. We could not see behind us because the blind he had was only 180-degree view. Had only 180-degree view. Just a back wall and a door with a window that was boarded up because the glass or whatever it had in it was broken. We just set up the chairs, started drinking, and the waiting began. We had a beautiful view of the area and the sunrise coming from the east of where we were. We didn't see anything the first hour or so. We just kept drinking and chatting. About an hour after the sun rose, we started hearing some limbs breaking and brush rustle from behind us. Sounded a good ways back, maybe 50 yards or more. We readied our rifles, hoping. We readied our rifles, hoping that what we were certain were hogs would circle around. I remember sitting there just waiting, watching the fog from my breath for a good 5 minutes, the rustling get closer. Then I noticed a really metallic smell. The best way I can describe it is the smell crappy tools give off when you don't take care of them. Kind of like a mix of copper, vomit, and poop. I looked at my buddy and whispered, "You smell that?" And he nodded and shrugged his shoulders. A minute later, we're still waiting. The rustling seems to get closer. Then it just kind of stopped. After a couple minutes, I could still smell the stink, but no noise, and figured maybe a couple of hogs had taken a dump near the stand and moved on. I reached to pick up the bottle as my buddy puts his rifle down. And just as we're doing that, we heard a scream/grunt. I have never heard anything like it. It was like a low grunt that escalated into a gravelly scream, and it sounded like it was right outside the back of the blind. Before we could ever really react, we heard a bunch of twig and branches snap. Sounded like it was right outside the back of the blind. Not a couple seconds after, we feel the entire blind shake about 3 times, like if a car had bumped into it. I dropped the bottle of whiskey and just looked at my friend, and he looked just as freaked out as I felt. We heard a loud singular grunt, and then the sound of twigs and branches breaking again, slowly getting quieter. We just sat there, too freaked out to move for what felt like an hour, but was only about 10 minutes. I don't know if it was the whiskey or just me trying to be brave, but I got up and opened the door, and nothing was there. We climbed down and had our rifles ready. We both knew it wasn't a hog, but tried to convince ourselves it was. We could see the old stand marks on the ground, and the whole stand had rocked forward about 6 inches. There was a bent portion of one of the metal struts and 2 big depressions where it looked like feet had dug into the rocky ground. We figured whatever it was stood there while it was rocking the stand. We stood there looking dumbfounded, and we just decided to get the hell out of there. We drove back to his main house and told his dad. He said to just stay at their house with them for the night, and we'll go check it out tomorrow. When we got there, the day after, we saw the same things that were there the day prior. And his dad was super confused. I don't think he initially believed us when we told him about what happened. We found where whatever it was had come from. There was a clear path in the grass leading away from the stand where it had been depressed, and you could see tree limbs broken. The highest one that was broken off was about 7 foot off the ground. We walked back 30 yards to the high fence that was there, and sure enough, about a 4 foot wide section had been mangled and bent down. His dad was pissed, obviously, but he was also really confused. He told us that he had never had this happen and reckons it was just a giant hog, but I never thought so. I don't want to just say it's Bigfoot, but I have never had an explanation as to what could have caused that. Over the years, I've grown to believe in Bigfoot more and more. My dad had an encounter with what he claims could have been Bigfoot as well, so maybe it runs in the family. All right, and I will go ahead and say that I reached back out to the gentleman that sent this in, like I do to all of them, and I thanked him. Told him that I would love to also share his dad's experience, and later that day he sent me his dad's experience, which is just as good, in my opinion. So I will be sharing that with you on our next segment. But yeah, guys, I thought this was a really, really good one. I mean, try to put yourself in their shoes. You know, a couple of college kids were out there hunting and hitting the bottle a little bit. You know, kids are kids. We all did it. But just sitting, you know, doing something that they're passionate about, something they love, hunting, sitting in the blind. They said about 15, 20 foot up in the air, and then the whole thing starts shaking. And that's after you hear this god awful grunt or scream or however he described it. Man, I couldn't imagine. I really couldn't. But yeah, I want to thank the two individuals that sent these in. Thank you guys so very much. Want to ask that everyone else out there, if you have an encounter that you would like to share with us, like to have me or another one of our members read. We got some other members that are going to be reading some of these too. But if you guys have something you want shared, want us to read, please send it in down there to mannimalencounters@yahoo.com. Again, want to remind everyone about our 2 shows weekly, Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and Thursday night at 9 p.m. also Eastern Time. This Thursday night, we will be having Mr. M.K. Davis on the show. So really excited about that one. So I hope you guys can tune in, get your questions ready for Mr. Davis there. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, just like I always say, guys, y'all be careful, be good to each other, and help each other out, guys. And we will see you next time.